The conference chamber floated in the void between stars, a neutral ground where no single species held advantage. Representatives from 47 worlds gathered around the circular table, their forms as diverse as the galaxies they called home. Some breathed methane, others basked under heat lamps, and a few existed as crystalline matrices suspended in specialized tanks. They had come to discuss the newest applicant for Galactic Council membership, Earth. Trell adjusted his sensory stalks and reviewed the preliminary reports. The humans seemed unremarkable at first glance. Bipedal carbon-based life forms from a water-rich world in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. Their technology lagged behind Council standards by several generations, but that was expected from newly contacted civilizations. The behavioral assessments painted them as social creatures, cooperative and curious. Every indicator suggested they would integrate smoothly into the galactic community. Yet something felt wrong. The human delegation arrived precisely on schedule. 5 individuals in dark blue uniforms walked through the airlock with measured steps. The lead figure, a woman who identified herself as Ambassador Riley, moved with fluid grace that seemed almost too smooth. Her eyes swept the chamber in a single pass, taking in every detail, every exit, every face. Trell noticed she cataloged the entire room in less than 3 seconds. Prey animals did not assess their environment like that. The introductions proceeded according to protocol. Riley spoke with practiced diplomacy, her voice warm but controlled. She thanked the Council for the opportunity and expressed Earth's desire for peaceful cooperation. Standard pleasantries, standard procedure. Yet Trell could not shake the unease settling in his digestive sac. During the recess, he observed the human delegation more closely. They did not huddle together like most prey species in unfamiliar territory. Instead, they dispersed throughout the chamber, each one positioning themselves with clear sightlines and unobstructed paths. One human stood near the primary entrance. Another had drifted toward the emergency exits. Riley herself had chosen a spot that gave her a view of the entire room. They were establishing a perimeter. Counselor Vren from the Pelian hierarchy approached Trell with similar concerns. Her species had evolved from small burrowing creatures on a world filled with ambush predators. She possessed finely tuned instincts for danger, instincts that had kept her ancestors alive for millions of years. "Their eyes," she whispered through her translator. "Have you noticed their eyes?" Trell had. Human eyes faced forward, positioned on the front of their skulls like paired targeting systems. In all his years studying xenobiology, he had only seen such eye placement in one category of species, pursuit predators. Every prey species on every world had eyes on the sides of their heads, maximizing their field of vision to detect threats. Forward-facing eyes meant something entirely different. They meant depth perception. They meant focus. They meant tracking. "Perhaps it is an anomaly," Trell suggested, though he did not believe his own words. "Their evolutionary path may have diverged from the standard models." The second session began with technical presentations. The humans shared information about their world, their culture, their scientific achievements. Riley spoke about Earth's diversity, the countless ecosystems that had shaped human development. She mentioned casually that humans had spread to every continent on their planet, adapting to Arctic tundra, scorching deserts, dense jungles, and high mountain ranges. Trell felt his unease deepen. Prey species did not conquer every environment. They found a niche and defended it. Only predators pursued expansion with such relentless determination. The demonstration of human technology provided the next revelation. A young human named Cooper operated a holographic interface with startling precision. His hands moved with controlled speed, fingers manipulating virtual objects in 3-dimensional space. Trell recognized the motion patterns. He had seen similar movements in avian hunters on his homeworld, the way they calculated trajectory and distance before striking. Humans possessed natural throwing accuracy. The meeting continued for hours. The council asked standard questions about Earth's political systems, economic structures, and social hierarchies. Riley answered each inquiry with practiced ease, never hesitating, never stumbling. But Trell noticed something else in her responses. She never looked down. She maintained eye contact with whomever spoke, her gaze steady and unwavering. Predator eye contact, a challenge and assessment combined. The incident occurred near the end of the session. A small maintenance drone malfunctioned, its containment field failing. The creature inside, a harmless six-legged specimen used for atmospheric monitoring, skittered across the floor in panic. 3 counselors lunged after it, their movements clumsy and ineffective. The creature darted between chairs and under tables, its primitive brain driven by pure survival instinct. One of the younger humans, barely more than a juvenile by counselor standards, moved with liquid speed. She did not chase frantically like the others. Instead, she predicted the creature's path, cut off its escape routes, and herded it into a corner with minimal effort. Her hands closed around it gently but firmly, and she returned it to the containment field within seconds. The chamber fell silent. The young human smiled apologetically. Sorry, reflex. Trell understood in that moment what his analysis had been missing. The preliminary reports had focused on human cooperation, their social bonds, their capacity for empathy. All true facts. But those traits had developed alongside something far more fundamental. Humans possess the patience of hunters, the spatial awareness of pursuit predators, and the reflexes of species that had chased prey across vast distances. Earth had not produced a civilization of prey animals that learned to use tools. It had produced apex predators that chose cooperation over competition. As the session adjourned, Riley approached Trell directly. She extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting, and he accepted it cautiously. Her grip was firm but not threatening. Her smile seemed genuine, yet her eyes held something ancient and unmistakable. "I hope we passed your evaluation," she said pleasantly. Trell managed a diplomatic response, but his mind raced with implications. The Galactic Council had never encountered a species like this. Every member civilization had evolved from prey stock, creatures that survived by hiding, running, or blending in. They had built their society on defensive principles, on risk avoidance, on careful deliberation. The humans had evolved differently. The question that would haunt Trell through the coming days was simple and terrifying. What happened when you gave predators access to the galaxy? The distress signal arrived during the night cycle, when most of the council members were in their rest periods. Only the emergency response team remained active, monitoring the vast emptiness between stars for signs of trouble. The message came from the transport vessel Gentle Current, a massive cargo hauler carrying 200 civilians across the Outer Rim trade routes. Then the signal died. By the time the council convened, 12 hours had passed. Counselor Vren pulled up the navigation data and projected it across the chamber's central display. The Gentle Current had been traveling through a relatively safe corridor, far from known pirate territories. Its last transmission indicated a catastrophic power failure, but no details about the cause or current status. "Our nearest response fleet is 3 weeks away," announced Counselor Bish, his translator converting his chemical signals into audible speech. "Standard protocol requires we dispatch immediately and hope the life support systems hold." 3 weeks, 200 lives hanging in the balance. The mathematics were brutal and simple. Ambassador Riley raised her hand. "The human vessel Pathfinder is currently in the Corward dock. We can reach the Gentle Current in 4 days." The chamber erupted in overlapping translations. 4 days seemed impossible. The distances involved required advanced jump drives that human technology supposedly lacked. Trell accessed the registry and confirmed that Pathfinder was indeed a human military vessel, though its classification remained vague in the official records. 4 days, Vren repeated slowly. "You are certain?" Riley nodded. Our jump systems operate on different principles than Council standard drives. We can make the distance, but we will need full authority to act as we see fit once we arrive. The Council had little choice. They authorized the mission and assigned 3 observers to accompany the human vessel. Trell volunteered immediately. He needed to understand these humans better, and this crisis provided the perfect opportunity. Pathfinder looked nothing like Council ships. Where galactic vessels emphasized smooth curves and efficient designs, the human ship was all angles and aggressive lines. It reminded Trell of a blade, something designed to cut through resistance rather than avoid it. The crew numbered only 30 humans, far fewer than a Council ship of similar size would require. The observers were given quarters near the command center. Trell spent the first hour exploring the ship's layout, noting the lack of decorative elements. Everything served a function. Every corridor provided multiple routes. Every room had clearly marked emergency equipment. The ship felt less like a transport vessel and more like a weapon that happened to carry passengers. He found his way to the command center, where Riley stood beside a tall man introduced as Commander Nash. They were reviewing tactical displays that meant nothing to Trell's understanding of navigation. The screens showed layers of data, probability clouds, and what appeared to be predictive models of enemy movement patterns. "Enemy?" Trell asked. "You believe pirates are responsible?" Nash glanced at him with those unsettling forward-facing eyes. "Pirates, system failure, or something worse. We prepare for all possibilities." The jump through hyperspace felt different than Council technology, smoother somehow, as if the ship slipped between the cracks of reality rather than forcing its way through. Trell spent the transit time observing the crew. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role without extensive communication. He noticed how they maintained awareness of each other's positions, how they adjusted their movements to avoid collisions without looking, how they operated as a single coordinated unit. A pack, they moved like a pack. The human military specialists particularly caught his attention. A group of Marines practiced combat drills in the cargo bay, their movements explosive and controlled. They worked through scenarios with lethal precision, treating violence as just another technical skill to master. A Navy team ran simulations at their stations, coordinating responses to dozens of theoretical emergencies. Fighter pilots reviewed attack patterns and evasion maneuvers, with the same focus Riley had displayed when cataloging the Council chamber. These were not civilians who had learned to fight. These were born hunters who had refined their instincts into doctrine. Pathfinder dropped out of hyperspace exactly 4 days after leaving Council space. The gentle current floated dead ahead, its running lights dark, its hull intact but lifeless. Nash ordered a sensor sweep while the communications team tried to establish contact. Nothing responded. "Life signs?" Riley asked. The sensor operator shook her head. "Interference patterns across all spectrums. Something is jamming us." Trell felt his digestive sac tighten. Jammers meant intention. System failures did not actively block sensor sweeps. Nash turned to Riley. "Pirates confirmed. They are probably waiting to see if we are worth ambushing." The humans did not panic. They did not debate. They simply shifted into what they called tactical mode. Trell watched as the crew transformed before his eyes. The casual efficiency became predatory focus. Every movement gained purpose. Every action served the hunt. Fighter craft launched from Pathfinder's bays, small aggressive ships that scattered into formation patterns Trell did not recognize. Marines assembled in the cargo bay, checking weapons with practiced speed. Medical teams prepared the infirmary for casualties. The entire ship reconfigured itself from transport to weapon in under 10 minutes. "Picking up power signatures," the sensor operator reported. "4 pirate vessels emerging from the gentle current's shadow. They are arming weapons." Riley's expression did not change. "Mr. Nash, you may engage." What followed defied everything Trell understood about space combat. Council military doctrine emphasized defensive positions, overlapping fields of fire, and gradual attrition of enemy forces. Human doctrine appeared to emphasize overwhelming violence applied with surgical precision. The fighters did not engage in traditional dogfights. They hunted. Each pilot tracked their target with absolute focus, ignoring everything else until their prey was eliminated. They used the debris field like cover, appearing from unexpected angles, striking and vanishing before return fire could track them. It was not space combat. It was an ambush by creatures that understood three-dimensional hunting grounds. The pirate vessels tried to flee. That proved to be a fatal mistake. Nash deployed pursuit teams immediately. They run, we follow, standard doctrine. Trell watched in growing horror as human ships chased the pirates across the system. Not just chased, but predicted their movements, cut off escape routes, and herded them into kill zones with methodical patience. The pirates were not fighting a battle. They were being hunted by something far more adapted to pursuit than they could comprehend. The engagement lasted 18 minutes. 4 pirate vessels became expanding clouds of debris. 0 human casualties. Marines boarded the gentle current and found the civilians alive but terrified, locked in compartments by pirates who had planned to ransom them. The rescue proceeded with the same efficient violence. Human soldiers cleared the ship room by room, eliminating threats with controlled aggression. The civilians were extracted within an hour. Trell stood on Pathfinder's observation deck as the gentle current systems came back online. Around him, the human crew returned to their normal routines, as if they had not just demonstrated predatory capabilities that exceeded anything in Council records. Commander Nash approached, holding 2 containers of dark liquid. He offered one to Trell. "Coffee. Thought you might need it after all that excitement." Trell accepted with trembling appendages. "Your people fight like nothing I have ever witnessed." Nash sipped his coffee and gazed at the rescued ship. "We do not fight, we hunt. There is a difference." That difference, Trell realized, was about to change the entire galaxy's understanding of warfare. The Council had built their civilization on defense and deterrence. The humans had built theirs on controlled aggression and pursuit. They had not invited diplomats to join the galactic community. They had invited apex predators who had learned to weaponize their hunting instincts, and those predators had just proven they could coordinate their kills with terrifying efficiency. News traveled fast across the galactic networks. The rescue of the gentle current dominated every major information channel, with footage of the operation spreading through millions of worlds within hours. The Council watched in fascination and growing dread as human fighters executed maneuvers that should have been impossible, as human soldiers demonstrated coordination that seemed almost telepathic, as the entire operation unfolded with predatory grace. Trell returned to Council headquarters and immediately requested an emergency session. The time for polite evaluation had passed. The humans were not just another species seeking membership. They represented something unprecedented in galactic history, and the Council needed to understand what they were dealing with before making any permanent decisions. The Science Division worked around the clock for 3 days. Trell led a team of xenobiologists, evolutionary specialists, and military analysts in a comprehensive review of everything humanity had shared about their world. What they discovered painted a picture that grew more alarming with each new data point. Earth was a nightmare world by Council standards. The planet existed in what humans called the Goldilocks zone, but that pleasant name hid a brutal reality. Earth experienced regular climate extremes that would have driven most species to extinction. Ice ages and warming periods cycled across geological time, forcing adaptation or death. Tectonic activity reshaped continents, volcanic eruptions altered atmospheric conditions, and asteroid impacts periodically reset the evolutionary clock. Yet life persisted. More than persisted, it thrived with aggressive diversity. "Look at the predator-to-prey ratios," said Research Director Kess, displaying comparative charts across the chamber. "On every council homeworld, prey species outnumber predators by factors of hundreds to one. It is the natural balance." But Earth maintained ratios of 20 to 1, sometimes lower. The entire ecosystem was locked in constant predatory pressure. Trell studied the data with growing unease. Humanity had not evolved in isolation from this pressure. They had evolved because of it, shaped by millions of years of being both hunter and hunted. Their ancestors survived by becoming better predators than the creatures that stalked them. The evolutionary analysis revealed the full scope of human adaptation. Their forward-facing eyes provided depth perception accurate enough to track prey across vast distances. Their upright posture freed their arms for throwing weapons with accuracy no other species had matched. Their sweat glands allowed them to run for hours without overheating, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Persistence hunting, the most terrifying hunting strategy in nature. Most predators relied on speed or stealth, brief explosive attacks that either succeeded or failed quickly. Humans had developed something far more patient and inevitable. They simply followed their prey relentlessly, never letting it rest, never allowing recovery. Hour after hour, day after day if necessary, until the target could no longer continue. They evolved to track patterns, Kess continued, highlighting neurological studies. Human brains developed specifically to recognize subtle changes in their environment. Broken twigs, disturbed earth, changes in animal behavior. They could follow trails that no technology could detect, using nothing but observation and intuition. Counselor Vren accessed the historical records humanity had provided. Earth's history was a continuous narrative of expansion and conflict. Humans had spread from a single continent to every landmass on their planet, adapting to environments that should have killed them. They crossed oceans on primitive vessels, scaled the highest mountains, survived in Arctic wastes and scorching deserts. And they fought constantly. The military records were particularly revealing. Human warfare had evolved alongside their technology, growing more sophisticated but never less lethal. They formed organized units that operated with pack mentality, each member understanding their role without extensive communication. They developed tactics based on pursuit and encirclement, strategies that trapped enemies and eliminated escape routes. Every human conflict demonstrated the same fundamental approach. Identify the prey, predict its movements, cut off retreat, and eliminate it with overwhelming force. "We need to understand something," Trell addressed the assembled council members. "Every species in this chamber evolved from prey stock, the Pelians from burrowing creatures, the Corinth from herd animals. My own ancestors were arboreal fruit-eaters who survived by hiding from predators. We built our civilization on principles of defense, avoidance, and cooperation born from shared vulnerability." He paused, letting the implications sink in. Humans evolved as apex predators. They are the thing that prey species evolved to fear. Everything about them, from their biology to their psychology to their social structures, was shaped by the hunt. They do not think like us because they see the universe through predator eyes. The chamber fell silent. Around the table, representatives from 47 worlds contemplated the creature they had invited into their midst. A species that saw patterns where others saw chaos. A species that pursued goals with patient inevitability. A species that had turned hunting from survival necessity into strategic doctrine. Counselor Bish broke the silence with a question that had been troubling him since reviewing the data. Their compassion. The reports indicate humans possess strong empathy, that they form emotional bonds across species boundaries. How does this reconcile with their predatory nature? Kess had prepared for this question. That may be the most disturbing aspect. Human empathy likely evolved as a pack bonding mechanism. Predators that hunt in groups must coordinate, must understand each other's intentions, must work as a single unit. Humans develop the ability to read emotional states, to anticipate reactions, to form deep social connections. But this empathy is selective, Trell added. They extend it to their pack, their family, their tribe. Those outside the pack are not enemies necessarily, but they are not protected by the same instinctive bonds. Humans can switch between compassionate cooperation and ruthless hunting depending on how they categorize a threat. The implications were staggering. Humans possessed both the capacity for violence and the emotional intelligence to deploy it selectively. They were not mindless killers. They were thinking, feeling predators who had learned to direct their hunting instincts toward chosen targets while protecting everyone else. Director Kess displayed footage from the Gentle Current rescue. Watch how they distinguish between pirates and civilians. The Marines eliminated threats with lethal efficiency, but showed immediate compassion to the rescued hostages. They switched between hunter and protector in seconds, with no confusion about which role to adopt. Ambassador Riley had been invited to address the Council's findings. She stood before them now, her expression calm but alert. Those predator eyes swept the chamber, assessing, cataloging, understanding. "You have questions," she said simply. Trell spoke for the Council. "We need to know if humanity can integrate into a galactic civilization built on principles foreign to your evolutionary history. Our society is based on defensive thinking, on risk avoidance, on consensus building. These are prey species adaptations. Can predators live peacefully among prey?" Riley considered the question carefully. Humanity has asked itself this same question for thousands of years. We are capable of terrible violence. Our history is soaked in blood. We have hunted each other, conquered each other, nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. The Council members shifted uncomfortably. "But we learned something along the way," Riley continued. "Predators do not have to hunt everything. We can choose our prey. We can redirect our instincts toward protecting instead of consuming. The question is not whether we are predators. We are and we will always be. The question is what we choose to hunt." She let that statement hang in the air before continuing. "Earth is united now because we decided to hunt our own worst impulses. We turned our predatory focus inward, targeting poverty, disease, ignorance, and injustice. We learned to hunt problems instead of people. That choice, that redirection of instinct, is what makes us suitable for Council membership." Trell wanted to believe her. The evidence suggested humans were capable of exactly what Riley described. They had proven they could distinguish between threat and ally, between prey and pack. But the fear remained, deep in his prey species' brain, the ancient terror of being noticed by something higher on the food chain. The vote would come soon. The Council would decide whether to embrace humanity or keep them at arm's length. But Trell knew the real decision had already been made. The galaxy had changed the moment humans arrived. The only question now was whether that change would save them or doom them. The Council chamber had never felt smaller. Representatives from 47 worlds waited in tense silence as Ambassador Riley prepared to defend humanity's place in the galactic community. 3 days had passed since Trell's presentation about human predatory evolution, and the fear had spread like a virus through diplomatic channels. Entire worlds were demanding reassurance that admitting humans would not endanger the delicate peace the Council had maintained for 6,000 years. Riley stood at the central podium, her posture relaxed but alert. She had not brought notes or prepared speeches. Instead, she spoke directly to the assembled representatives with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. "You are afraid of us," she began, and the translator systems carried her words to every corner of the chamber. "That is rational. Your species evolved to fear predators because that fear kept you alive. Those instincts served your ancestors well, and they serve you now by making you cautious about threats." Counselor Vren leaned forward. Yet you ask us to overcome millions of years of evolutionary programming. No, Riley replied calmly. I ask you to understand that evolution gave you fear, but intelligence gave you choice. You can acknowledge the danger while recognizing that not all predators must be your enemies. She activated the holographic display and pulled up footage from Earth's history. The images showed human conflicts spanning centuries. The violence and destruction her species was capable of unleashing. The Council watched uncomfortable scenes of warfare, conquest, and devastation. Riley did not hide or minimize any of it. This is what we were. For most of our history, we turned our predatory instincts against each other. We hunted our own kind with the same efficiency we once used against prey animals. We developed weapons capable of destroying our entire world, and we came terrifyingly close to using them. The chamber remained silent, waiting. But something changed about 200 years ago. Humanity reached a tipping point. We realized that our greatest threat was not external enemies but our own nature. So we made a choice, a deliberate decision to redirect our hunting instincts toward new prey. Riley changed the display to show different images: medical teams eliminating diseases, engineers conquering environmental challenges, scientists hunting for solutions to energy scarcity and food production, military forces deployed not for conquest but for disaster relief and protection of vulnerable populations. We call it the American Doctrine, though it spread far beyond America. The principle is simple: use predatory capabilities to protect rather than conquer. Deploy overwhelming force with surgical restraint. Hunt threats instead of people. She pulled up footage from recent military operations. Council members watched American soldiers providing medical care to injured enemies, Marines carrying wounded civilians through combat zones, Navy ships evacuating populations from natural disasters. Each scene showed the same pattern: lethal capability held in check by conscious choice. The doctrine has three core principles, Riley explained. First, establish overwhelming superiority. Make sure you can win decisively if violence becomes necessary. Second, demonstrate restraint. Show that your strength is controlled, not random. Third, protect those who cannot protect themselves. Extend your pack instincts to include everyone who needs defending. Trell accessed his own notes and spoke carefully. These principles sound noble, Ambassador, but they rely on humans choosing restraint. What happens when that choice changes? Riley met his gaze without flinching. The same thing that happens when any species makes destructive choices. We suffer consequences. But consider this: predators understand cost-benefit analysis instinctively. Every hunt requires energy, involves risk, and potentially brings injury. We evolve to avoid unnecessary conflict because it threatens our own survival. She walked around the podium, addressing the council more informally. Prey species built your civilization on hiding and running. Those are valid survival strategies, but they create defensive mindsets. You design weapons to hold territory, not to pursue enemies. You develop military doctrine based on fortification and attrition. Your instinct when threatened is to retreat and regroup. The council members shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the truth in her words. Humans think differently. When we identify a threat, our instinct is to pursue it until it is no longer dangerous. We track it, corner it, and eliminate it. That sounds terrifying from a prey species perspective, but consider the advantages when applied to actual dangers. Riley pulled up data about galactic threats. Piracy had been a persistent problem for centuries, with Council forces unable to completely eliminate it. Criminal organizations flourished in the gaps between jurisdictions. Smuggling, trafficking, and extortion all thrived because the Council's defensive military structure struggled with pursuit operations. Your defensive doctrine allows threats to escape and regroup. Pirates raid, then flee before your forces arrive. Criminals operate in areas your security cannot reach. Smugglers use the vastness of space to their advantage. These problems persist because your military forces are not designed to hunt. Counselor Bish saw where she was heading. You propose that human forces could eliminate these persistent threats. Not eliminate, Riley corrected. Hunt, track them to their bases, follow their supply chains, apply patient, relentless pressure until they have nowhere left to hide. That is what persistent predators do. We do not give up. We do not stop pursuing. We follow until the prey collapses or surrenders. She displayed tactical analyses of how human methods would apply to current galactic security challenges. The projections showed dramatic improvements in response times, success rates, and long-term threat reduction. The difference was stark. Prey species doctrine aimed to survive encounters with threats, while predator doctrine aimed to eliminate the threats entirely. But the doctrine has limits, Riley emphasized. We established rules of engagement that prevent excessive force. We created oversight systems that punish violations. We built institutional checks specifically because we understand our own capacity for violence. Predators that cannot control their impulses do not survive long-term. She paused and looked around the chamber. You see us as dangerous. You are correct. We are dangerous. Every human alive possesses the capability for violence, the instinct for hunting, and the pattern recognition to identify prey. But we also possess something equally important, the intelligence to choose when and how to deploy those capabilities. Riley activated one final display, showing American military forces in action across multiple scenarios. In each case, the humans demonstrated precise application of force, immediate disengagement when threats were neutralized, and consistent protection of noncombatants. The American military trains for a simple concept: be the most dangerous thing in the room, then choose not to be dangerous unless absolutely necessary. Our soldiers learn to switch between warrior and guardian in seconds. They understand that true strength comes from restraint, not from using every capability at every opportunity. Trell studied the footage carefully. He saw Marines standing down even when they had tactical advantage, once threats surrendered. He watched pilots breaking off attacks when civilians entered the combat zone. He observed soldiers treating injured enemies with the same care they gave their own wounded. This is what we offer the Council, Riley concluded. Not a guarantee of perfect behavior, because no species can promise that. We offer a proven doctrine for channeling predatory instincts toward protection. We offer military capabilities that complement your defensive strengths. We offer the choice to hunt threats so that you can continue focusing on building rather than fighting. She returned to the podium and addressed them with absolute seriousness. You fear what we might become. That fear is valid, but consider what happens if you reject us. Humanity will continue existing with or without Council membership. We will continue developing our technology, expanding our reach, pursuing our goals. The question is whether we do this as partners within your civilization or as outsiders developing separately. The implication was clear without being a threat. Humans were coming to the galactic stage regardless of the Council's decision. The only choice was whether to guide that arrival or let it happen without input. Counselor Vren spoke quietly. You ask us to trust that you will maintain your doctrine. No, Riley replied. I ask you to verify it. Send observers to our military academies. Audit our operations. Test our restraint. Do not trust our words, trust our actions over time. Judge us by what we do, not by what you fear we might do. The session ended without a vote. The Council needed time to process everything Riley had presented, but Trell noticed something as he left the chamber. The fear remained, but it had shifted slightly. Instead of pure terror at predators in their midst, the Council now contemplated a different question. What could they accomplish with predators on their side? The attack came without warning during the third moon cycle after humanity's conditional acceptance into the Council. A research station orbiting a gas giant went silent mid-transmission, its last message fragmentary and terrifying. Trell watched the recording 3 times, each viewing more disturbing than the last. The scientists screamed about something breaching the hull, about creatures that moved impossibly fast, about everything going dark. Then nothing. Within 6 hours, 2 more stations reported similar attacks before their signals died. The pattern was clear and horrifying. Something was systematically eliminating Council outposts in the outer rim. Something that struck with coordinated precision and left no survivors. The Council convened in emergency session. Every representative carried the same expression of barely controlled panic. In 6,000 years of galactic civilization, they had never faced a threat like this. Pirates could be negotiated with or avoided. Natural disasters were predictable. Even the occasional rogue AI could be contained with proper protocols. This was different. "The Devourers," whispered Counselor Vren, her voice barely audible through the translator. "The ancient records spoke of them, but we thought they were extinct." Research Director Kess displayed what little information existed. The Devourers had appeared once before in galactic history, 3,000 years ago. They consumed everything in their path, leaving dead worlds and silent stations. The Council of that era had barely survived by retreating to fortified sectors and waiting for the Devourers to move on to other regions of space. "They are pure predators," Kess explained, her tendrils trembling. "No diplomacy, no communication, no purpose except consumption. They exist to feed and reproduce." Trell felt his digestive sac tighten painfully. The Council's defensive military doctrine was designed for containment and deterrence, not aggressive engagement. They could fortify important worlds and hope the Devourers eventually left. They could retreat and survive, but they could not fight. The casualty reports came faster now. 3 outer colonies gone, 7 more stations silent, 50,000 civilians missing, presumed dead. The Devourers were accelerating their attacks, pushing deeper into Council space with each cycle. Counselor Bish addressed the crisis with remarkable calm. "Our fleets are repositioning to defensive lines. We will establish fortified zones and evacuate vulnerable populations. Standard protocol for overwhelming threats." "How long?" Ambassador Riley's voice cut through the controlled panic. The Council turned to look at her. She had been granted temporary observer status during the conditional acceptance period, and she stood at the edge of the chamber with that unsettling predator focus in her eyes. "How long before the Devourers reach core worlds if you only defend?" Riley pressed. Kess ran the calculations and displayed them reluctantly. 8 weeks at current rates of advance, 4 weeks if they maintain acceleration patterns. Riley pulled out a communication device and spoke into it rapidly. Trell could not follow all the technical terms, but he recognized authorization codes and deployment orders. She finished and addressed the Council directly. "Earth is committing its military forces. Full deployment. We have 6 carrier groups within range, plus support fleets from the European Union, China, and Russia. Combined human forces number approximately 200 vessels with full tactical capability." "To defend our core worlds?" Bish asked hopefully. "No," Riley replied flatly. "To hunt the Devourers. We will track them to their staging areas, engage them at maximum aggression, and eliminate the threat entirely." The chamber erupted in overlapping translations. The concept seemed insane from a prey-species perspective. Why pursue an overwhelming threat when you could hide from it? Why engage when you could survive through evasion? Riley waited for the chaos to subside before continuing. "The Council's defensive doctrine is based on surviving threats. The American doctrine is based on eliminating threats. These Devourers are predators, yes, but they have never faced organized resistance from apex hunters." "You cannot know they are vulnerable to your tactics," Vren protested. "True," Riley acknowledged, but I know they rely on overwhelming weaker prey. They expect retreat and panic. They have probably never encountered an enemy that pursues them back. Within 12 hours, human forces began arriving in Council space. Trell watched from the orbital platform as Carrier Group Washington translated into real space, followed by its escort vessels. The ships moved with aggressive purpose, already orienting toward the last known Devourer positions. Admiral Brooks commanded the joint human fleet from the carrier Lincoln. She was a tall woman with gray-streaked hair, and eyes that reminded Trell of hunting birds he had studied as a xenobiologist. Her command center hummed with controlled activity as dozens of specialists coordinated across multiple fleets. "We need full tactical intelligence on Devourer capabilities," Brooks addressed the Council observers. "Movement patterns, weapon systems, preferred attack vectors, everything you have from the ancient encounters." Trell provided what little existed. The historical records were fragmentary and thousands of years old, but they painted a picture of creatures that struck in swarm formations, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and ferocity. Brooks studied the data with the intensity of a predator analyzing prey. "They hunt in packs. Interesting. They rely on shock attacks and rapid overwhelm. Also interesting." "Why interesting?" Trell asked nervously. "Because those are prey hunter tactics, not apex predator tactics. They evolved to overwhelm species weaker than themselves. They probably never developed strategies for fighting equals, let alone superiors." She turned to her tactical team. "Standard pursuit doctrine, echo pattern with encirclement protocols. I want hunter-killer teams deployed at every likely retreat vector. These things run, we follow. They scatter, we track them individually. No escape, no regrouping, no mercy." The first engagement occurred in the Serpent's Void, a region of space filled with stellar debris and unstable gravity wells. Perfect ambush territory for both sides. The Devourers detected the approaching human fleet and did what they had always done. They attacked in massive swarms, expecting to overwhelm through numbers. They did not expect return fire of such precise lethality. American fighters tore through Devourer formations with surgical accuracy. Each pilot tracked multiple targets simultaneously, eliminating threats with minimal ammunition expenditure. They did not panic when swarmed. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They hunted with patient efficiency, treating each Devourer vessel as prey to be cornered and killed. The Devourers tried their standard breakthrough tactics, concentrating forces on single points to create gaps in the defensive line. But the humans did not have defensive lines. They had pursuit formations that adapted instantly to enemy movements, maintaining pressure from every angle simultaneously. Trell watched the battle unfold through sensor feeds, struggling to process what he saw. The human vessels moved like living things, coordinating without apparent communication, anticipating each other's actions with almost telepathic precision. They were not fighting as individuals in formation. They were hunting as a unified pack. "Devourer forces breaking formation," reported the sensor operator. "They are attempting to flee." Brooks smiled without humor. "Pursuit teams engage. Echo protocols, do not let them scatter." What followed demonstrated the true meaning of persistence hunting in three-dimensional space. The Devourers fled in multiple directions, trying to split human forces and escape into the void. But for every fleeing vessel, a human hunter team followed. Not just followed, but anticipated their paths, cut off their routes, herded them into kill zones with methodical patience. The Devourers were being hunted by something more adapted to the pursuit than they could comprehend. Admiral Brooks stood calmly at her command station, tracking dozens of separate engagements across a volume of space that staggered the imagination. She moved tactical markers with fluid precision, coordinating fleet movements like a conductor leading an orchestra. Each gesture represented death for Devourers who had never encountered organized resistance. Marine boarding teams to stand by, Brooks ordered. Any Devourer vessels that survive the fighter screen are to be captured if possible. Intelligence wants live specimens. Trell felt something cold settle in his chest. The humans were not just fighting. They were studying their prey while killing it, learning its weaknesses, gathering intelligence for future hunts. This was not desperate survival. This was professional elimination of a competitor species. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, 78 Devourer vessels had been destroyed, 12 captured, and exactly 3 human fighters lost. The disparity was stunning and terrifying. Brooks reviewed the after-action reports with satisfaction. Good kill ratios, clean pursuit execution. Medical teams report all captured specimens secured for analysis. She turned to the council observers. This was first contact. Now we know how they move, how they think, how they react to pressure. The next engagement will be faster and cleaner. Trell realized with absolute certainty that the Devourers had made a fatal mistake. They had entered council space expecting to find prey. Instead, they had attracted the attention of apex hunters who were already planning their extinction. The war for galactic survival had begun, and humanity intended to win it through the same persistence that had made them masters of Earth. They would pursue, they would adapt, and they would not stop until every devourer was eliminated or driven so far into the void they would never return. Ambassador Riley joined Brooks in the command center. The council is requesting updates. Brooks nodded. Tell them we are hunting. Tell them the devourers are now our prey. And tell them to watch closely, because this is what happens when you put apex predators on the right side of a war. The war changed over the following weeks. What began as desperate defense transformed into systematic elimination. Human forces pushed deeper into the void, tracking devourer movements with relentless precision. Every engagement added to their understanding of enemy behavior, and every victory made the next hunt more efficient. Trell accompanied the fleet as official council observer, documenting everything for the historical record. He had spent 6 weeks watching humanity wage war, and what he witnessed fundamentally altered his understanding of conflict. The Council's military forces fought to survive. The humans fought to win, and those concepts were not the same thing. The tactical command center aboard the carrier Washington hummed with constant activity. Display screens showed star maps marked with red indicators for devourer sightings and blue markers for human fleet positions. Admiral Brooks stood at the center of organized chaos, directing operations across a dozen systems simultaneously. Hunter Team Delta reports contact in the Kepler sector, announced a communications officer. 3 Devourer scouts attempting stealth approach on the mining colony. Brooks did not hesitate. Dispatch Pursuit Wing 7. Eliminate the scouts before they can report back. If any attempt to flee, track them to their base. This was the pattern that had emerged. The Devourers would send scouts to identify targets. Human forces would eliminate the scouts while tracking their origin points. Then pursuit teams would follow the trail back to Devourer staging areas and strike with overwhelming force. The hunters had become the hunted, and they did not adapt quickly enough to survive the reversal. Trell watched a tactical display showing one such operation. A Marine strike team had traced Devourer supply lines to a hidden base inside a shattered moon. The assault was not a battle. It was an extermination. Human soldiers cleared the installation room by room with mechanical efficiency, eliminating resistance and securing intelligence before moving on to the next compartment. The Devourers fought with desperate ferocity, but desperation could not overcome superior tactics and patience. Target secured, reported the Marine commander. Intelligence teams are extracting data cores. Estimate 4 more supply hubs in this network. Brooks marked the locations for future operations. The Devourers had built their strategy around hidden bases and surprise attacks, classic ambush predator tactics. but humans excelled at pattern recognition. Every captured base revealed more information about the enemy network, and every new data point made the next target easier to locate. The systematic dismantling continued. Fighter wings hunted Devourer raiders across empty space, pursuing them through asteroid fields and debris clouds with patience that would have broken prey species pilots. Naval task forces blockaded retreat routes, cutting off escape and forcing enemy forces into kill zones. Marine boarding parties captured vessel after vessel, gathering prisoners for interrogation and intelligence analysis. Commander Nash briefed the tactical team on recent findings. Psychological profiles indicate the Devourers expected minimal resistance. Their entire strategic framework assumes prey behavior from targets. They lack doctrine for prolonged engagement with aggressive opponents. They never learned to fight equals, Brooks concluded. They evolved to overwhelm weaker species, so they never developed strategies for facing superior forces. Classic apex predator arrogance. Trell found it deeply unsettling that humans could analyze predator psychology so clearly because they themselves were predators. They understood enemy thinking from the inside, recognizing the assumptions and tactical patterns because those same patterns existed in human instinct. The difference was that humans had refined their hunting over thousands of generations and countless wars. The Devourers were skilled predators. Humans were artists of violence who had turned predation into science. The decisive engagement came 6 weeks into the campaign. Intelligence teams identified the Devourer command vessel, a massive ship that coordinated all attack operations in Council space. It sat at the center of a defensive formation deep in the Serpent's Void, protected by the largest concentration of Devourer forces yet encountered. The Council observers expected Brooks to request reinforcements, to build overwhelming numerical superiority before engaging such a significant target. Instead, she smiled with predatory satisfaction and began planning the hunt. Standard encirclement pattern, she ordered. Stealth teams to establish perimeter tracking. I want full sensor profile before we commit to engagement. We hunt this one properly. The operation took 3 days to prepare. Human forces moved into position with patient care, establishing observation posts around the Devourer formation without revealing their presence. Stealth ships tracked enemy patrol patterns, noting shift changes and defensive gaps. Intelligence teams analyzed command vessel behavior, building psychological profiles of its leadership. When Brooks finally gave the order to engage, the attack came from every direction simultaneously. Fighter wings dropped stealth fields and struck defensive positions with surgical precision. Marine boarding pods launched toward the command vessel, while naval guns suppressed supporting ships. The entire formation executed a coordinated assault that had been planned down to individual seconds of timing. The Devourers responded with their standard tactics: concentrate forces, overwhelm through numbers, break through and scatter. But those tactics required enemy forces to retreat under pressure. The humans simply absorbed the counterattack and maintained their encirclement. Every Devourer vessel that tried to break out found human hunters waiting at the predicted escape route. Trell watched Marines storm the command vessel's bridge through live combat feeds. The Devourer leadership fought to the last, refusing surrender even when defeat was inevitable. The humans accommodated this preference with efficient lethality, clearing the bridge and securing the ship's systems within minutes. Command vessel captured, reported the Marine commander. Devourer leadership eliminated. Intelligence teams are accessing their strategic database. The remaining Devourer forces collapsed quickly once their command structure fell. Some tried to flee deeper into the void. Human pursuit teams followed each one, tracking them across light years with relentless patience. Others attempted to hide in nebulae and stellar phenomena. Human sensors found them anyway, hunting through interference that would have blinded prey species equipment. Within 2 weeks, Organized devourer resistance in Council space had ceased to exist. The few survivors scattered to the far edges of known space, broken remnants of a force that had entered the galaxy expecting to feast on helpless prey. Instead, they had encountered predators more refined, more patient, and infinitely more dangerous than themselves. The final report showed over 600 devourer vessels destroyed or captured, with human casualties numbering fewer than 2,000. The disparity spoke to overwhelming tactical superiority, but also to something more fundamental. The humans had waged war the way they approached everything, with patient focus, adaptive strategy, and absolute commitment to achieving their goals. Ambassador Riley addressed the Council in the aftermath, standing before representatives who now viewed humanity with a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear. "The devourer threat has been eliminated," she reported formally. "Our forces will maintain patrol rotations in the affected sectors for 6 months to ensure no resurgence. After that, we recommend establishing joint Human Council military academies to share tactical doctrine." Counselor Vren spoke carefully. "You hunted them to extinction in 6 weeks. That efficiency is both impressive and terrifying." Riley nodded acceptance of the observation. "We are predators. That will never change. But we proved something important during this campaign. We can direct our hunting instincts toward threats instead of toward you. We can be guardians instead of dangers." Trell stood and addressed the chamber. "I have spent 6 weeks observing human military operations at close range. I have watched them fight with efficiency that exceeds anything in Council records. But I have also watched them show mercy to defeated enemies, provide medical care to wounded devourers, and go to extraordinary lengths to minimize civilian casualties, even when it complicated their tactical objectives." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The ambassador asked us earlier if predators can live peacefully among prey. I believe the answer is yes, but only if the predators choose to control their instincts. Humanity has proven they can make that choice. More importantly, they have proven they can maintain it even under the stress of warfare." The formal vote took place 3 days later. The Council accepted humanity as full members by unanimous decision. The conditional period ended, replaced by genuine partnership between prey species and the apex hunters who had chosen to protect rather than consume. Admiral Brooks stood on the observation deck of the Washington, watching Council space stretch out before her. Commander Nash joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "Think they will ever fully trust us?" Nash asked. Brooks considered the question. "No, they will always be slightly afraid because their instincts cannot be overridden completely, but fear is not always negative. Healthy respect for capability can build stronger partnerships than blind trust." She sipped her coffee and watched human patrol ships coordinate with Council defense forces, predators and prey learning to work together. "We showed them what we are," Brooks continued. "Now we show them what we choose to be. We hunt threats so they can build civilizations. We pursue dangers so they can focus on progress. We choose to be the guardians because someone needs to be, and we are better adapted for it than anyone else." Nash smiled. "The American doctrine." "The human doctrine," Brooks corrected. "Every nation on Earth contributed forces to this campaign. We all made the choice together." Across the fleet, human personnel maintained their watch. Fighter pilots tracked patrol routes with predatory focus. Naval crews monitored sensors with patient attention to pattern changes. Marines drilled for threats that might never come, maintaining readiness through constant preparation. They were predators, all of them, born hunters whose evolution had given them every advantage for pursuing prey. But they had chosen to hunt evil instead of innocence, to pursue threats instead of victims, to use their apex capabilities for protection rather than predation. The galaxy had learned to fear them first. Now it would learn to depend on them. And humanity would prove that predators who choose restraint are the strongest guardians any civilization could hope for.